Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Nice to be here. Uh, First of all, let's not make this into a one-way session. I'll try to make this a two-way session. How many of you are here who are startup founders or belong to a startup? Raise your hands. How many of you are VCs or part of VC? Just one. So just two. So there are just two people. Now you know who these two people are. So you know who to kind of narrow down to after this talk shows. Cool. So today I want to just talk about what, and because majority of us are founders here, so I can talk a bit of shit, right? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about what goes on in the startup founder's mind. So what do you see here? There are two smiling startup founders. By the way, the other person is Mukesh, my co-founder. Uh, Anyone wants to take a guess? What do you see here? Yeah, that's the bare minimum smile I sometimes have, yes. Anyone wants to take a guess why we could be smiling? We had just raised some capital, right? So this is the smile that you have when you raise some capital. But I can tell you, the next day after you have raised the capital, this is how I am, right? Because the weight of raising capital and then performing two VCs like Karthik, who are going to ask you 3 years down the line, how do you give me my return, is very, very high, right? Because you have to constantly think then, how do you utilize this capital? How do you bring it to fruition where you can bring your company to something else? And the questions, by the way, are not something like this. The questions are slightly different. Questions are that we constantly ask ourselves. Anyone who can guess what kind of questions you guys have as founders when you are in trouble or you've just raised money? When will the money hit the bank? Why are we doing this? Yes. Can I pay the salaries? Very good. Yes. Anyone else? Exactly. I think some of you have hit it bang on. Will I survive next month? Right? Will I have enough in my bank so that I can survive the next month? I think that's a very valid question that startup founders have. Yeah, yeah. So will I get my salary because my fundraise? I think most VCs, by the way, if you guys don't know this, but most VCs are these days stuck like startup founders because they don't have money in the bank to actually fund startups like yours. So we have to. This is the cycle, unfortunately. Correct me if I'm wrong, Karthik. So this is one question which is definitely there, and then I'll use this profanity. Who should I tell? Who should I go and speak to? Yeah, थोड़ी सी फटी हुई है. Meaning how we just for our international friends, who should I go and speak to about that I'm shitting bricks every morning, right? And or all the time because I don't know what needs to be done here to fix it. Maybe my revenue is not in place. Maybe my the cash flow is not looking great. Maybe my funding is not really there, or even if the investor has signed it, they have not transferred the money, or someone has backed out at the last moment. I actually had an investor who we signed in March, had a Russian LP and could not transfer their funds. So we have all sorts of problems, and sometimes it is very difficult to actually figure out कि किसको बोले जाके, who should I go and tell कि दोस्त इसमें फटी हुई है. And I can tell you, a lot of people come and ask me, so Sumit, how are you doing? And my reaction is फटी हुई है, right? So this is how it is. And then another question is, how do I create more copies of myself? How do I clone myself so that I can get over the problem of people who are there or some of the bad hires that you have in your team? How can I replace them with my own self so that I can get more work done? Now, this is another problem because constantly you are battling with so many issues, sometimes 18, 19, sometimes sleepless nights, even specifically when you're doing product releases. So you don't know what really is going on over there. And you always want to just copy yourself so that you have the same passion. You have another person who has the same passion, same motivation like you have to work on the problem statements that you are going through. And lastly, where is the undo button with the beep obviously in your mind always going on? Where is the undo button? And an undo button is not about that you're writing something on Word or PowerPoint or Excel and you're trying to undo it. But I took that call 3 months ago. It has completely backfired. How do I go and do undo on that particular decision that I took, which because of which we lost some money? And a lot of early stage guys are here. When you make mistakes early on, maybe you lose five, $10,000. When Series B companies like Fable Care make a mistake, we lose $1 million, right? So where do you go and undo this? Where is that undo button so that I can go back and change that? And constantly, to be honest, I'm always thinking, where is the fucking time machine? If I can go back in, back into time and change that particular decision or take something else, or go into the future and understand which investor is actually going to give me money, brilliant problems can be solved very, very quickly. So these are the things which are constantly going in our minds. And how many of you believe that this is exactly what goes on in your mind? Startup founders, all of you guys. So I hope that you are relating with me, and specifically in the current environment where in the last 7-8 months we have most of us have not been able to raise any money. So I don't know. Most of us are running on empty fuel tanks with just some gas. I remember that one of the movies where they had to blow in a flying aeroplane to actually keep it flying. So this is how we are running. So the question ultimately comes to, it would have been easier if we were all doing a job, right? So why are we doing this? And some of you could be doing it for money. Some of you could be doing it uh, for something else. Some of you are doing it for the kick of it. But I can tell you that ultimately your purpose matters the most. It matters over everything else of why you are doing whatever you are doing. For me, at Fable Care, the purpose is because my and my co-founders' parents, fathers died because of chronic diseases. We come from not so well-to-do families. We saw what chronic disease can actually, damage the economic affairs of a family, and hence for us this was a important issue that we kind of took upon us to kind of solve. But it is not the case for a lot of startup founders, and I'll give you an anecdote. A few days ago, someone came to me and said, we wanted some guidance. We are doing an edtech company, and we wanted some guidance on how to go about delivering value to our customers and the students, etc. So I asked them, why are you doing this? They said, Byju's has raised so much money, and 2 years down the line, I want to just grow to about $100,000 a month, and then I want to sell to Byju's for $10 million. I said, if that is your objective, most likely you will never reach even $10,000 of money, and most likely you will never be able to excite your audience for the products that you are making. So purpose is extremely important on why you are doing a certain startup. And I can tell you, purpose has to be then communicated back to rest of your team, and you need to get a team or a family who runs behind this purpose. Otherwise, you would not be able to succeed. Finally, what does it mean? I think very similar to what Karthik, you have to keep at the problem, which is you have to become a cockroach. I think a lot of guys who are funded by SOSV, this is something that I learned at SOSV, that you have to be not a unicorn, you have to be a cockroach startup, right? A cockroach startup is somebody who can even survive the current timeline, which I believe is like a nuclear blast, even without one happening in Ukraine. It is a nuclear blast right now because no one is getting funded, even if the best of the best companies are getting marked down. I think it is close to that. But a cockroach startup is someone who can survive even in the worst of the times. And unless you have that passion, that purpose, you would not be able to become a cockroach. And the only thing that you need to make sure is you shouldn't get whacked, because a cockroach can die if you whack it, right? So you should just make sure that a competition shouldn't come and whack you out of space, and hence keeping your purpose and the products that you're making close to what the people really want is something that is extremely important. Uh, Things that I learned to avoid in the last 1 year: wannabe startup employees. I'm telling you, this is one of the big challenges. There are a lot of people who will want to join a startup, but these are wannabe startup employees who are there only to ask you for money. They are not aligned with your purpose, and hence do not deserve to be in your family. Please stay away from wannabe startup employees. And if you, by mistake, have hired one, please fire them as quickly as possible. Over reliance on brand and marketing. Do not think that if you go to do a lot of brand and marketing, you will acquire the right customer. Most of the times you wouldn't. Build the right product which is usable by the customer, whoever your audience is. Keep them happy and get more customers from them rather than over relying on brand and marketing. I don't think it is going to serve. And by the way, I'm telling you, with after $3 million of spend on that and having burnt my fingers, only after that I'm telling you, do not spend on brand and marketing. Lastly, don't be deflated, specifically in these times. If investors tell no to you, it's okay. Not every investor is going to invest in you. Personally, I can tell you during Series A, which was last year, we closed in March. Before that, 8 months before that, before I closed Series A, I pitched to 357 investors, had at least about 200 plus of them going for second or third conversation. So 8 months constantly during entire COVID period, I was at home 7 a.m. in the morning. I was pitching till about 7 p.m. in the evening. And that was the only job because the business was anyways not going anywhere. So I was only pitching throughout the day. But ultimately I needed only one to accept and agree and put money, right? But you have to wait for 356 people to tell you no and one guy to tell you yes. And in the same way, Series B, actually, the set was obviously much smaller, but it was in the same lines. I can tell you we are currently doing Series C, and it's the same story. Uh, uh, Another thing, keep your family close. And family does not mean your close ones who are there, your wife, your parents, and so on and so forth, or your better half and your parents and so forth. But it also means a lot of people who have believed in you, have the same purpose, and have joined your company. So that's the family. Then you need to keep close to yourself. But more than that, instead of enemies, you need to keep your community very close. So the startup community needs to come together. I think that is not happening enough these days. The community needs to come closer. We need to speak to each other much more. I think what is happening in India is there is a lot of animosity, even if the startup is not competing with you. A lot of us try to show our own big beep in front of other founders, trying to showcase that how big you are and so on and so forth. I believe let's be a bit humble, have a bit of humility. Let's try to help each other out as much as we can. Not everything can be solved with money. Sometimes a comforting shoulder also helps out people. So let's give that shoulder to people and bring this community closer. And I think Orbit and SOSP have been doing that, for me at least, for a very, very long time. Long live the cockroach. Thank you so much, guys.